This is a Viper truck. Now Dodge didn't call it that. They named it the Ram SRT10, but it does in fact have the same exact 500 horsepower V10 engine that you find in a Viper. And from a distance, it looks to be in really good shape. But up close, it's apparent that it's been sitting for a very long time. Now the auction where I bought the truck listed it as a run and drive, and then added that it has engine and transmission issues, which is kind of like saying, this beer is cold and refreshing, but I've been storing it in my car's trunk for the last week. Tranny issues aside, it came with a pretty steep discount. I paid $13,000 for it, which is a fair bit to gamble, but it's around $10,000 less than the next cheapest classified ad I could find for a comparable Viper truck. All we need here is this V10 engine to be in good condition, as it's alone worth around 10 grand. But I immediately started second guessing the deal when I got a call from the first transport driver that refused to pick it up, because they said, this truck is completely dead. Totally freaked out, I phoned the auction and they sent someone to look at it, stating that they found a severed battery ground wire, and when they rigged it up, it would start. When the second transport driver arrived, they encountered the same exact issue, and I was able to walk them through it on the phone, even though at this point, I'd never seen the thing in person, and it was over 1,000 miles away from me. When it showed up, I came prepared with a slew of cables, a spare battery, and my jump pack, which made it pretty easy to get started and off the trailer. And to my surprise, the engine itself sounded fine, and it clearly went into reverse. All right, they parked it for me over here. That sounds all right. Let's see this thing. A little dirty. Let's see here. It says the alternator's working. With our rigged up battery solution, the Ram truck made it home. All the lights were flickering in the interior. It seemed to be running okay, but mind you, I only drove it about 2 miles and I didn't go very fast. So I'm very anxious to see if this car runs and drives well, or if it does have any major engine or transmission issues, like was mentioned in the auction listing there. Right off the bat, before we even sort the battery, we've got to get this thing to a state where I can at least work on it. Look at the hood shocks. They're beyond gone. Ooh, that's not bad. Where we got it? Right there, right there. All right. I hate the idea of working under a hood that's supported by a piece of wood, so let's fix this for good. One. There we go. Simple as that. That's a super simple and cheap fix. It'll save us at least a few $1,000s in hospital bills while we look underneath the hood. And at first glance, it's pretty rough under here. We've got this cracked up overflow tank. That shouldn't be too bad to replace. We've got the Viper valve covers on either side, and these things come from the factory looking bright, beautiful, cherry red painted, and clearly that luster is gone. I noticed if you look down here, the oil cooler lines are really oiled up here, like it's been leaking a bit, but whenever I pulled the dipstick, luckily, it does look like there is oil in the engine. And so I'm really hopeful that this thing runs halfway decent. That's what we need here to make this a good buy. We're not going to know until we get some ground action hooked up right. And, well, we just got to replace this cable. This is trashed. It's gone. We see this ground cable actually goes off into 2 sections. One of them connects here, which I believe is probably thermostat housing, and then down on the frame rail. I was able to get this replacement ground cable here. These things are dirt cheap. They're like 15 bucks, and it already has the 2 different connectors at the end. So this should be a direct replacement, and it'll be a lot easier than trying to rig up our own. All you got to do is remove that old cable and throw on the new one. The lower cable we're going to reach down here behind the radiator. There we go. With our new cable, we'll take the longer of the 2, run it down to that frame rail, and the shorter one, we'll throw it right on that thermostat housing. Now that we have a solid and functional ground cable, it should make our life way easier, and I'm going to show you how much better things should work now. I've got my battery jump pack here. I'm not even going to connect things to the existing battery. I've got that off to the side, and I also have the power lead off to the side. So again, no power to the battery whatsoever. Then here on our Fanttik T8 Apex, I'm just going to simultaneously hit the 2 buttons on here, which will put this into a manual override mode. Currently, it's sending 15 volts to the truck. Remember, this is a big Viper-powered V10 8-liter engine. With my foot on the brake, we hit the push to start, and the truck fires right over using just the power from our Fanttik T8 Apex. This will start a V10 Viper motor without the help of a battery. I can't think of a single car or truck it wouldn't start. And I wanted to tell you that you can get your very own T8 Apex jump pack at the lowest price of the year right now over at Amazon during Fanttik's Prime Day sale. And I know it's not quite Prime Day yet, but they're hooking up my audience with an exclusive discount code on the T8 Apex and a few other amazing Fanttik tools right now. Like the X8 Apex cordless tire inflator, which can inflate tires up to 150 PSI. Just set your desired air pressure, hit start, and it will shut off automatically. It even has a built-in LED flashlight for use at night and a power output that can top off your mobile devices. Now, I've been using this specific T8 Apex for over 2 years now, and you'll see it in the countless amount of my videos jump-starting these dead auction car batteries. I depend on this on a weekly basis, and I can't recommend it enough. So don't wait until Prime Day and risk them running out. Head on over to the links down in the description box. First, clip the coupon code on the Amazon product page, then use the corresponding promo codes and get the best deals of the year on these amazing Fanttik tools. So everything we believed to be problematic is now off the front of this engine. We're still left with a nice oily mess, but it'll be much easier to clean this all off and replace all of those failed parts. Since these trucks are nearing 2 decades old and they've got a huge following, there's a lot of information at the common failure points, and well, everything that was on that list we pretty much pulled off the truck. And it was really obvious that these things were worn and need to be replaced. We've got our power steering pump here that is just littered in fluid. We've got our cam position sensor that was leaking, likely due to a bad O-ring, and unfortunately the tab cracked off in the process of removing it. We'll fix that in a moment. Then we've got our AC compressor that is covered in grime. The truck was blowing super warm air, so we just figured we might as well replace it, because the good thing is these parts aren't super expensive to replace. A lot of them come off of generic Dodge cars, except for one component, probably the most common failure point on these Dodge Ram SRT trucks, and those are their oil cooler lines. They're known to leak heavily, and if not replaced, well, you could experience catastrophic damage on your very expensive V10 Viper engine. Luckily, we've got an aftermarket part here which is guaranteed to stop the leaks completely, and well, you can't even buy the factory ones anymore. Now, I wanted to buy a replacement cam position sensor because our tab broke when we were moving it. It was leaking a lot of oil, likely because of a failed O-ring, but you can't buy one of these for the Viper engine anymore. They just don't exist. Luckily, this is really thick plastic, so it should repair really nice. This has got to be one of my favorite tools of all time, the Eastwood Hot Stapler. This has saved me a ton of money in repairing plastics instead of replacing parts. Luckily, our cam position sensor here, it kind of fits back together like a puzzle, and like I said, that tab is really nice thick plastic. So I've got the heat set on medium here. We're going to kind of just get this in place like that. I'll take the nice zigzaggy staple, and because this heats through induction, the probes here, they're not actually hot. Go ahead and hit the button. It's heating up the staple. I'm going to kind of just get it right here on the crack itself. So just wait a couple seconds. Plastic will cool down. The staple should just pop right out. Like I said, you could touch this right after. It doesn't get hot. It's just heated through induction. And right there, we've got a permanent repair. But for good measure, I'll go ahead and also staple this side right here. Going from the other end now. Yeah, that was the right size there. Twist it at the end. And just wait a couple seconds. After reinstalling our cam sensor, we replaced the oil cooler lines, as they're really simple to swap, and it's imperative we stop this truck from losing oil. But before we install our new accessories, now is a great time to degrease this disgusting engine bay. Okay, could you make it more of a mess there?
I have to turn it sideways. It's just chuggy.
We're getting there. We got a brand new belt. We've got brand new power steering fluid and a brand new pump, and outside of the pump as well, as you can see. That wasn't me who did that. I'll just show you my feeder here. There's someone else right there. Anyway, Mike, can you explain to people how we are going to bleed this system, get all the old power steering fluid out of it?
Add fresh fluid while the engine's running. And there's a drain pan below. I'm gonna wait till the fluid comes out fresh. Sam's gonna be inside. Turn the wheel to the left and the right so we see clean fluid.
That was very good. You could have said it more excited, but you did the job. But the one thing I want to point out is this is different than a lot of other power steering units I've seen. Usually the line that takes the fluid out of the reservoir is on the underside, but instead it's reverse on this. So the lines that return to the reservoir actually go up and under the power steering reservoir here. We've got those ports on the bottom side here completely blocked off, and those lines are running, like Mike just said, underneath the truck. I'm gonna get in. Since we've got a belts installed, when we turn the wheel, that fluid should start to circulate. When it starts to get clean, we're gonna stop, reassemble, and be done. Right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Be more excited.
Correct.
Go ahead. The good news is that our power steering feels great. It's all bled and it's all hooked back up. There's no funny noises or squeaking or anything like that. We've got a brand new pump and fresh fluid. But there's a little bit of bad news. And that's how we found the original power steering hose that was in the car. Well, it was leaking pretty severely. This is just another one of those parts that Dodge doesn't sell anymore, and the only aftermarket solution available online costs nearly $300 for a hose. With everything already hooked up and all these new parts, I didn't really want to waste any more time ordering another piece online, and to be honest, I didn't want to spend $300 for a hydraulic hose. So I took a cue from our oil cooler line install, because if you look at the oil cooler lines, they fail in a similar way to our power steering hose, and that's that there's an internal seal or O-ring that fails, and once they do, well, the lines just start to leak profusely. So I went to a hydraulic shop that sold me this very high pressure hydraulic hose, and they went and attached two fittings, one on either side, and they made it long enough to run from the reservoir all the way down to the power steering cooler. All we needed from there were a few male-to-male adapters. Those go into the reservoir and again into the power steering cooler, and while it's a very tight fit, much more tighter fitting than the factory hose, it works, and it's going to solve our problem, and it only costs about $120. So if you run into a leaking hydraulic component on your car and you can't get one from the manufacturer anymore, try a local hydraulic hose and fitting shop. A lot of the times they can replicate the line that you have, or they can repair the existing line. And now that we've got everything hooked up, we're finally able to take this truck on a test drive. My fingers are crossed we don't find any more major issues. All right, so basically what we're looking for here is a truck that doesn't overheat, a truck that doesn't have a transmission slip, and well, the only way I know how to test that is to turn the overdrive off and pound it. Darn, it feels great, actually. So far, I'm thrilled with how this truck is performing. It sounds great and seems to accelerate just fine. The transmission goes into all the gears, and even though it short shifts a little bit, I can only imagine that's the way that Dodge set it up from the factory. Now, when I stopped to get a few gallons of gas, I did notice something kind of funny with the gear selector, and this is maybe why the auction listed it with a transmission issue. So when they say there's a transmission issue with this car, I can only hope that it has to do with the linkage and not the actual transmission itself. Because see, whenever I put this in park, see, it's the utmost position. See, it wants to think that it's in reverse, but if I take my foot off the brake, which is completely off the brake, and I hit the gas, the truck doesn't move. It's definitely in park, but it thinks it's in reverse. Even though it started off a bit iffy with just some replacement parts, few lines, and a major degreasing under the hood, I think we've already increased the value on this SRT10 Ram. If you agree with me, be sure to hit that like button and let me know in the comments, would you have paid $13,000 for this truck the way it showed up, or did I pay a little too much for it? Now, to be completely honest, I wouldn't have bid $13,000 on this truck had I not seen the engine and transmission issue disclosures at the auction, but I didn't. First of all, I won it on an auto bid, which means you kind of just place in these low ball bids, you set it and forget it, and once in a while you win one, and that happened to be this truck. But the other big reason is that when I saw the listing for this truck, it was listed as a green light, and all the auction guys know that green light means you're getting a good vehicle. There's a green light, a yellow light, which means caution, and a red light, which means it's as is. Greenlight vehicles can actually be returned for a full refund if there's any problem with the car that's not disclosed when it shows up. But since they disclose that it has an engine and a transmission issue, well, technically, I guess you're stuck with it. It just didn't make any sense, and whoever wrote up the listing might have been a bit sly, but now I think they're just being overly cautious. I mean, you could technically consider a failed power steering pump or a failed AC compressor as an engine issue, as it is bolted to the engine. Next up, we got to make this truck look as good as it runs, and we'll do that by replacing any of the missing trim pieces, removing that tattered old hood blanket, and refinishing our valve covers DIY style so they look brand new. And once we do a full service on this, it should be a great truck to hot rod around in. But also, if we keep the budget low enough, it could be a great flip truck. Considering the current sports truck trend that's going on, these things are quite expensive nowadays, and this makes for a pretty ideal sports truck budget project. Now, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit that button below so that you're notified next time we release a video on the Viper truck. And if you're not already following me on Instagram, where I post updates there before anything goes live here, well, all you got to do is find me right here, hit that link down in the description. I can't thank each and every one of you enough for watching today, and I'll catch you very soon.